A number of years ago, there was a guy named Ross Perot who was running for president, and he nominated a vice presidential candidate that nobody knew. And in the first debate, he was sitting there and he looked in the camera and he said, "Who am I and why am I here?" And that's I woke up this morning and all of a sudden I'm in Hutchinson. And Pastor Rick apparently called down everybody that he knows who could possibly preach here, and they weren't available, and got really desperate, and he found me. My name is Brian, and I am an attorney. I've been practicing law in Minnesota for about 18 years, but I also am a pastor. I planted a church with the Baptist General Conference, or Converge, which is the same denomination that Shalom is part of, and did that in 2003, and pastored in Maple Grove at a place called The Journey, and until the recession killed us. And so I'm back practicing law. Don't hold that against me. And I know your minds might be, totally scrambles your screen to think of a guy who's a pastor and a lawyer. And I can, by the way, I can finish any pastor joke you have or any lawyer joke you have. So don't test me in this, because it will happen. I'm married. I have 6 kids. I'm married 22 years and 4 months tomorrow. My wife hates that when I can figure it out to the day that quickly. And I have ADD and talk really fast. So that's who I am. You're in for a ride for a little bit, and I'm glad to be here. And before we start, why don't we just pray? God, we're going to open your word, and we're going to seek to learn. I pray that you will just kind of clear our minds, clear our thoughts. Let us put aside whatever happened this morning, the impatience we had with the kids trying to get ready for church, and maybe the little argument we had with our spouse and things like that. God, let us just forget about those things, and let us come before you and just open our ears, open our hearts, so that we can hear from you. We give ourselves to you for this time. And we thank you for your word. In Christ's name, amen. So, as I said, I'm a lawyer. I'm an attorney. I don't wear a watch. You guys are in trouble. And they told me I have till 12:15, right? Okay. That's fine. What's funny? I'm not sure what's funny. So Rick and I were talking in preparation for today, and he told me that he kind of explained the PRAY acronym and some things that he has been teaching here lately. And he wanted me to talk about the power of just a simple act of faith, and what that could accomplish. And I was thinking, I could think of a whole bunch of different kind of like Bible stories about, and Peter walking on the water and things like that. And where people just said, okay, I'm going to do just this very simple thing. And, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to trust you. And Jesus talked a lot about faith. In fact, he told us that we could have very small faith. He said we could have faith the size of mustard seed. Thank you. And mustard seeds being very, very small. I saw them once, and I remember they were small. But from them comes a very large plant. And what God can do is he can take that very small bit of faith that we have, and he can explode it and grow it. And he can do things that we could not otherwise see. But we need to be willing to allow him to do that. And so we're going to look today at somebody who not only had kind of the head faith and the head knowledge of who God was, but also who was willing to put that into action and put it into practice. James tells us that faith without works is dead. So even if we have our doctrine right and everything, we're called also to live our lives and to act out our faith. And so we're going to look at a picture of that. We're going to look at a woman by the name of Rahab. And so if you have your Bibles, open them to the book called Joshua, 6th book of the Bible. We're going to chapter 2. And if you have the Pew Bible, or whatever we call that here, if you have this red Bible, it's page 152. And so just flip it open to that. We're gonna work through some of this story. And the first thing we do is I'm gonna read a few verses for you, and it's really kind of the scene setting. And I hope as you read along that you will see that this is just incredibly hilarious. So read with me. We're going to read through verse 7. So, then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went, and he entered the house, and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab, and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab. Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on her roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the roads that lead to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. So that's kind of our intro to this story. And did you guys get how funny that is? Did you see everything there? There are 2 spies who come into Israel, or come into Jordan, into Jericho, and they're sent there to spy. And these guys are absolute buffoons. They walk in, and apparently everyone in Jericho knows where they are. And they're in Rahab's house. And so, in my cartoon bubble, which is always kind of filled with bizarre things, I have this this picture of like Jason Bourne and James Bond, and they're walking around with, I'm with the other spy, and there's like this arrow, and they're walking around and maybe taking pictures of the wall. Can our tanks fit through this? Will we be able to, assault this way or whatever? And they are, just bumbling spies. Everybody knows where they are. And then the next characters that we see in this scene we see the security guards. It's the security guards for the king, and the king hears about it, and so he sends people there. And so I've got in my mind, these bodyguards, and they're, in their dark suits, and they're muscle bound, so they walk like this. And they come up to Rahab, and they're like, Rahab, we know you got 2 spies. Where are they? They've got dark glasses on too. And Rahab goes, they went that way. And the bodyguards say, okay. And they go and they follow. The guys don't even search her house. And so, it's kind of, when you look at it, it is a very funny story, the way it is set up. But what the writer is doing is he's calling our attention to focus on kind of the central character of this whole thing. This story is not about the spies. It's not about the security forces who are out searching for the spies. It's about Rahab. And as we read further, we're going to see that Rahab is a woman of faith. And there's going to be, I want you to learn 3 things from this. And there's going to be a big thing, there's going to be a bigger thing, and there's going to be the biggest thing. So if you're taking notes, you can just go big, bigger, biggest, okay? Very simple to take notes on this piece today. So before we look at the next verses, what we need to understand, this main character that the author is focusing us on isn't the normal kind of character that you would see in a Bible story. Okay? We just, to set this in historical setting, let's keep in mind that the nation of Israel is sitting outside across the Jordan, and they're ready to come into the land of Canaan. Okay, so back up a little bit. God created the world, and then there was Noah and the flood and everything, and then there was Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, and God said, I'm going to build a nation, and through this nation all men will know of me. There'll be a light to all nations. And so God says, I have this plan, and I'm going to do this, and the nation of Israel started growing, and Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat went down to Egypt, and they were, and they were there for a while and grew to be a people of about 2 million people in Egypt, but they were in slavery. And so then God said to Charlton Heston, go to the Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And so Moses went and he did that, and he raised up Moses as a leader and brought the plagues, and the nation of Israel left. And then there was the giving of the 10 Commandments and the law, and there was the idolatry. And for that, the punishment was the nation was going to wander for 40 years in the desert until that generation has died off. And then God would bring them into the land that he had promised. And that's where we are. The closing of the book of Deuteronomy, the book just before Moses dies, chapter 34. Joshua 1. God comes to Joshua and says, you're my new guy. And Joshua's like, I'm scared, because Moses was like, he was Moses. And I'm Joshua. And so he's going, I guess God is going to lead me in this. And God says Moses to Joshua in Joshua 1, be courageous, be strong and courageous, for I am with you. And I've already accomplished what you're facing. I've already brought it about. And so Joshua was stepping out in faith, leading the way God wanted him to. And now we come to Rahab. And we see in this kind of setup scene, we see that she's a person who, for some reason, she decided to hide these spies. We don't really know why she hid the spies. We don't get to hear her thoughts in those first 7 verses. But we get to hear them in the next few verses. So pick up with me at verse 8. And the author tells us this: before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea, for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. We'll stop there for a second. Now we get to see what Rahab is thinking. She kind of did this thing where she decided, I'm going to hide these spies. Before these verses, we had no idea why. Here she is. She's a woman, and she's a Canaanite, and she's a prostitute, and all of those things are, like, in the eyes of the Jewish people who are reading those, all of those things are very, very bad things. And so there's kind of like 3 strikes against her already. But she, for some reason that we don't understand, she decided to hide the spies. And now we start to hear it. And she has this amazing proclamation of faith. I told you we're going to have a big thing, a bigger thing, and the big S thing. This is the big thing. Rahab has she's got a tremendous understanding of who God is. She's got a tremendous, she has this tremendous recognition of God. I would call it kind of the head faith. If you look through those verses again, starting in verse 8, she says, we have heard what your God has done. We have heard how through you, he got you out of Egypt, and he parted the Red Sea, and you went across safely, and the Egyptians haven't been able to get to you. And we have heard that these other 2 kings out in the desert who attacked you, that through you, they were completely obliterated. And so we have heard of this God. And she has this intensely amazing proclamation, because she says, your God, the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. And that's a really big deal for her to say. For a couple reasons. First of all, she was a Canaanite. And the Canaanites in that day and age, I'm not sure about Canaanites today, but Canaanites in that day and age were, that was a joke, sorry. I told you I'm ADD, people, so work with me. The Canaanites in that day, they believed in many gods. And so there would be a god of fertility, and there would be a god of the harvest, and there would be a god of rain, and there was a god of the sea, and there was a god of this and a god of that. And in fact, each of the different Amorite nations would have their own gods. Our god of the sea is much better than your god of the sea. Our gods are superior. And they had this belief system also that each god was kind of territorial. He's our God, so wherever we are, that's where he is. And so if we're doing really well, that means our gods are good and they're better than yours. And if there's like a drought or something, we've done something wrong to offend our God, or maybe it's your gods are better, and I don't know what's going on. And these people had all these different conceptions about God, and he's territorial, he's only a certain part, and in the midst of that entire mindset, Rahab looks and says, your God is the Lord God, and he is God in heaven above and on earth below. Absolutely astounding for her to grasp that. Absolutely astounding. She has an understanding of who God is. She has this head knowledge. She finally gets it. Because she knows that this God, doesn't matter where you are, he is still sovereign. And it doesn't matter where you are, he is still faithful. And it doesn't matter, even if you're living among people who believe in different gods, your God still protects you and takes care of you. This must be the real God. And he is God in heaven above and on earth below. He is the God who is completely holy and separate from you, but he's also the with you God, the Emmanuel, the God who is with us. And she could write a theological textbook about God. And so again, this whole, the unlikeliness of this entire story keeps coming out because Rahab, again, female, prostitute, not Jewish, is grasping these things about God that many Jewish people start to forget and they start to take for granted. But she really has this amazing, astounding understanding of who God is. You guys get that? Yes? Anyone? Bueller? Yeah? Okay. So that's a really big deal. For someone like her to understand this, to understand it as fully as she does, it's a profoundly amazing thing. And so that's a big deal. By the way, churches are filled with people who have this kind of knowledge. And they could say, you know what, I know who God is. I can tell you, I can tell you all the right theology about Jesus and fully God, fully man, born of the Virgin Mary, and might be able to rattle off some creeds and things like that. But they never put their faith into practice. I kind of my cartoon bubble thing. I think of people who just have the head knowledge of God and who never put their faith into practice. I kind of look at their faith as it's like a bucket of Jell-O. Anyone have a bucket of Jell-O at home? Last week? Wow. Okay, I think of a bucket of Jell-O because it's jiggly and it's heavy and it doesn't really feed anyone and it doesn't really save anyone and it's just something I carry around and it's really heavy. And so I have this faith and it says, okay, I'm going to pray before every meal and I'll go to church and I'll teach Sunday school, but it accomplishes nothing. Because I'm not really putting it into practice. I'm not really stepping out in my faith. And so it's just this head knowledge that doesn't transform me, and it doesn't transform the world around me. Rahab went beyond that, though, because she was willing to act on her faith. And that's the bigger thing, is that we look at this woman who shouldn't have really even understood who God was. But not only does she understand who God is, but then she steps out in faith and she is willing to do something for God. And what does she do? She hides these spies. And again, continuing with kind of the humor of the story, these spies, we don't know how tall they were or anything like that, but flax, first of all, not from the first service because you heard the answer before. Do you know what flax gives us? Anyone? No? Linen. Flax is used to make linen. So it's used to make material, to make thread, to make cloth, to make rope. And what they do is they would harvest flax, and it was about 3 feet tall when it was cut. And they'd have to soak it, and then they'd put it out to dry. And you have to put it out kind of evenly and spread it all out so that it all can get sun. You can't have it piled up. So if you pile it up, then the stuff on the bottom is going to start to mildew and things like that, and really bad things will happen, from what I hear. And so you have to kind of spread it out, and it's maybe an inch thick. So I love that picture. She takes the spies up on the roof and says, "Here, I've got some flax here. Hide under it." Really? Because they would have been seen instantly. But you know what? You know what she did? Is she was stepping out in faith. And it was just this little thing that she was willing to do. She was saying, "I will hide you." It was a concrete thing that she did. I know who you are, God, and I know these people are from you. So I am going to risk, and I'm going to do, and this wasn't like something huge, okay? It was a very small thing that she did. I will hide you. I will do it very poorly because I don't really have a good hiding place. I'm waiting for the bookcase with you pull this one book and then it turns around and you hide the spies and then you turn it back. And she didn't have that. And so I will hide you under this flax. No one will see you, I'm sure of it. But she's willing to do it. And even when she steps out in faith, she does it in a flawed way. Because if you look back in a couple verses earlier, she lies 4 times. And she's trying to step out and do just this little thing for God. And she tries to do it, and she does it in a really kind of a not great way. Because she said, I didn't know where they were from. And they left. And I don't know where they go. But if you go that way, you can catch them. And all 4 of those things were lies. And so she's like stepping out, and she's willing to do something really small. She's trying to put her faith into action. She's doing it in a crummy way, and it's a really small thing. Keep in mind, it's not a huge thing. God comes to us almost every day and puts people in our paths, and these are like opportunities where we can reach out to somebody, we can minister to somebody, we can love somebody, we can give somebody hope. And it's always kind of small stuff. He didn't come to Rahab and say, I want you to go to the Amalekites and the Jebusites and the Hittites and the mosquito bites, and I want you to preach, and I want you to convert them all. And, he doesn't do that. He says, could you hide my people? And so, again, big thing, she's got this incredibly astute understanding of who God is, and that he is working, and that he is seeking to accomplish things. She's got that. The bigger thing is that she wants to join God in doing that. And she is willing to take very small steps. She's willing to do just little things. I will hide you. As the story goes on, we see that after the goons have gone chasing them, she lets them out her window and she says, go over here and hide here for 3 days. After that, you'll be fine. You can go and cross the river. And so she continues to do kind of these little things in helping. So she's willing to step out. And it's something very simple, something very concrete. It's something that's practical. And let's get to the biggest thing. Because the biggest thing, and this is the thing that we see this story of Rahab and so forth, and there's a lady that helped hide spies. Cool. But what happens after this is she makes the bargain with the spies and says, here, check with the CIA, see if when you invade, can you save us? And, they call Langley and they say, yes, we will save you. Hang this purple thread out your window. And when we come and we invade and, the walls come tumbling down, we will come and we'll get you and your parents and your brothers and sisters and everyone who belongs to them. And they were saved. And not only were they saved, but we see later that Rahab became part of the nation of Israel. She converted. She was a believer. And not only that, but she married someone who was like a great-great-great-grandpa of King David. And she is in the house and line of Jesus Christ. And God said to this woman, who was a Canaanite woman, who was a woman, and who was a prostitute, there is a place for you in my kingdom. And you're not just going to save spies, but I'm going to use you in ways that you can't even foresee, because you are going to be part of the bloodline of Jesus Christ. What an amazing picture that is. When we have the head knowledge, we know that big part that's in place, and when we take the bigger step of saying, I'm going to step out and do something, and we do something that is very small. I'm going to hide a couple spies. We can't even foresee the way God will use that. And that's the biggest thing we need to understand, is God takes those acts of obedience, those small steps, and he takes those and he uses them in ways that'll just scramble our screens. Because we don't have the big picture that God does. But when we step out and we do this little thing, all of a sudden God will take it and multiply it and use it in powerful ways. Let me demonstrate it in a kind of a tangible way. And this is maybe the picture for you to take home. I talked about a bowl of or a bucket of Jell-O. I want to talk about thread instead, because thread kind of is in this story. there's the flax that makes thread, and then there's the rope and so forth. So it all fits together. But I want you to think of yourself as string or as thread. This is common everyday household thread. Thread is commonis in the Latin. You can break it easily. And but thread is something that we seem to think is really not all that big a deal, but it actually is very powerful. I need someone to come up. Yes, you young man, would you please come up here? You can leave your glasses. I want this guy. This guy, yeah. So he agreed to do this before. Not really. Could you lie down and with your facing up? Back to the ground. There we go. Simple thread, okay? I broke some for everyone, and I'm not a He-Man. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to, I'm just going to like hold him down with thread. Could you stand up, please? I lost my grip. Okay, that fell out. Wasn't supposed to work that way, but try it at home. You can hold a person down with string if you have the proper grip. And because, thank you. You did a great job. And see Carol Merrill on the way out for your parting gift. But you can do, you look at thread and you say, well, this is something that's really kind of innocuous, but you can actually hold a human being down with one piece of thread if you put it in the right place and hold it firmly and don't lose your grip on it like I did. So kids, try this on your parents later today. But we look at, I want you to think of yourself. I want you to think of yourself like you were a spool. Is that what it is? Spool of thread? I don't use thread, so. But think of yourself as that. Like thread, you didn't create yourself. You didn't create yourself. And everything that you have and everything that you know and everything that you are was given to you by your Creator. Just like this thread, it was given a certain thickness and it was given a certain color and a certain strength and all of those kind of things by its Creator. And what we need to do is kind of like what Rahab did, because what she did was she said, I don't have much, but I'll give you this. And we're kind of like thread because we don't know how much is on our spool. I mean, we kind of live our lives and we don't know when the end is going to come. But what we need to do is we need to look at the Creator every day and say, here's the thread that's coming off my spool today, and I'm willing to give this to you. Whatever it is, my intellect, my hands, my heart, my money, my compassion, my creativity. I'm willing as I live my life today and as I peel off this bit of thread, I am willing to look for people around me who are hurting. I'm willing to look for people around me who need hope. And I'm willing to open my mouth and speak words of hope. I'm willing to encourage someone who needs encouraging. I'm willing to tell someone that they are worthwhile. I'm willing to serve lunch at a high school. I'm willing to help give to a parking lot. I'm willing to help a single mom whose washing machine is broken down. I don't have much, but what I'll do is as I pull this stuff off my spool, I will give it to you. And please use it. And the amazing thing is that God will use it. Because what God does is He takes my thread, and He takes your thread, He takes your thread, takes your thread, takes your thread, and He weaves them all together. And as He weaves those threads together, He is creating the fabric of His kingdom. And He is weaving threads together in the community of Hutchinson as you work together and you give what you can and you bring what you have and you surrender it to Him. And He will weave and He will weave. And we can't see the big picture, but He can. And as He weaves this stuff together, He's making rope that can be lifelines for people and that calls people to safety, to salvation. The way Rahab tossed rope out her window and was saved. We need to be obedient to His call. We need to be willing to live our lives in a way that we know that we're just, every day, we're just pulling a little bit off, and God, whatever I have is yours. You guys do that? You live your lives like that? That's the challenge that Rahab gives us. That's the challenge that Christ calls us to. Little faith. With that little faith, I can do incredible things. Let's stand and we'll pray. Lord, I want to thank you, first of all, that you are a God who doesn't just use the people who we think you will use. You don't just use the religious authorities and the beautiful people, but you come to people who are far from you. You came to a Canaanite woman who was a prostitute, and you revealed yourself to her, and you ignited a powerful faith in her. And when she was willing to act, you took it and you used it in ways that no one could have ever imagined. And you used her faith and her actions to help bring Christ into this world. And now you want to use us. And you want to use our faith and our actions to continue to bring Christ to this world. God, allow us every day to pull off whatever thread we have and to give it to you. Let us have eyes that see people around us. Let us see how we can give our thread to you and how we can open up our mouths, use our hands, use our feet, use our brains, use our hearts. Let us love people. Let us serve people, knowing that you're going to use it and you're going to weave all of our threads together to do things that we can't even understand, that we can't begin to imagine. We thank you for being the God who is God in heaven above and on earth below. And our prayer today is that you'll take us and use us. Give us the guts to live our lives focused on you, giving ourselves back to you every day. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.